Any game dev will tell you, shipping a game, it's a miracle. It takes all kinds of work and coordination for even small projects. So, what happens when you've got 22 of those projects? Our next speakers are here to share their lessons learned from creating an anthology of games centered around the tarot. Forming the studio known as Compact, please welcome Francesca Carletto-Leon and Samantha Ortiz.
Hello, GDOC and gamers. Welcome to our talk, How Did You Ship That? We have 30 slides in 30 minutes, so let's go. To kick things off, hi, I'm Sam, and I'm a narrative designer and writer in the industry.
And hey, hello, I'm Cheska. I'm a game designer and educator, and we are both based out of Chicago. So Cartomancy was made possible by a team of 5 people who we will call the organization team throughout this presentation, just like truly incredible, wonderful, amazing, talented individuals. So I acted as our project lead and designer for the hub interface, and Sam was our communication lead. Cartomancy is a virtual deck of games based on the Major Arcana cards of tarot. So players pull a virtual tarot reading for themselves, either a single card or a 3-card spread. Tarot readings are used for introspection and guidance in situations in our lives, and each card symbolizes certain life lessons or themes. So each team in this anthology project was assigned a card and then tasked with creating a game based around that card's themes. I was inspired to start this project because I was really seeking a way to reconnect with the larger games community. It was prompted by the overwhelming isolation I felt during the pandemic, and also after leaving my studio job in early 2021. I really wanted to go back to that original root of why I love making games, which is the collaboration element. So I really wanted to find a way to fund small, weird, lovely games, because I think we need more of those. And for those unaware, there are 22 Major Arcana cards, so that means 22 games. This was a huge project that involved like 70 plus developers, and we get asked a lot, how did you ship that, right? It's like, we know it's a miracle that any game ships, let alone a game that is actually 22 games. So it was very complicated, and we're going to get into a little bit of the logistics and backgrounds and how we actually did this project.
Yeah, so let's break that down. This project took a little over a year to complete from beginning to end. We came together in the summer of 2021. We opened applications up in August, crowdfunded in October, and then we developed and released the game between November of 2021 and August of 2022. So the way we selected teams was a mix between approaching teams we knew and loved and having an open call. We also initially planned for the teams we reached out to begin their development before the Kickstarter, so we could show examples of what types of games that would be in the anthology. But this didn't end up happening because we had no money. So we did an open call via tweet so we could reach outside of our immediate networks. Each application was reviewed by all of the organizational team members, and we looked for teams that had a proven track record of successfully making small, highly polished projects, including solo developers. Because we are so small, we knew that we wouldn't have time to do a ton of management, so we needed teams to be excited and self-organized.
So to dive a little bit into the finances behind the project, this is kind of a breakdown of where the money came from and also where it went. To give a big snapshot. So this project was completed on a $39,000 USD-ish budget. Half of that immediately went to contributor stipends. So we did $1,000 USD stipend per team, which we paid half upfront at the start of the development and half upon completion. We also budgeted some extra money here for a small amount of marketing and also those payment transfer fees, since we had to do a lot of different payments to a lot of different people and geographic locations. That was a pretty significant cost for this project. We also budgeted in a bit of extra wiggle room in case we needed to replace a team if any team had to drop or any other unexpected things that there's you can never estimate for everything. So having that little bit of extra really saved us. And we really wanted all of the teams to benefit as much as possible from this project. So on top of doing that $1,000 stipend just upfront for their games, we also are doing an even rev share split for 2 years post-launch, paid out every 6 months if a minimum payment amount is reached. So how we do that is that we pay the team leads, and then the team leads are responsible for paying their teams. Yeah, I will say that this project had so much money moving all to different places and to different people. If you're doing a project where you're paying this many people, I cannot recommend enough getting an accountant who is familiar with the digital distribution of games and how that works. I'm so confident I messed up reporting my taxes because it's just so confusing. But I'm hoping the IRS does not come for me because I made negative $500 on this project. So hopefully, please don't come for me. We also did so much paperwork. There was so much logistical organization that went into making sure that the teams knew what was going on, and that we also had all of the information and like legal permissions that we needed to be able to distribute all of the games. So we really had to consider what information the organization team needed, and also how we were going to organize all of it. Generally, for the major stages of the project, we developed checklists that the developers could go through so that they had a centralized place to figure out exactly what they needed to do for that step. We didn't want to overwhelm the teams, but we also had to make sure that the organization team actually had the capacity to like review these documents intentionally, right? And also archive them and store them, right, for future use. I think if I did this again, we would definitely want to do like some sort of submission portal that would help us catalog all of this. Sam spent a lot of time moving documents from like email and form submissions into like Google Drive and other places for storage. So when teams were initially accepted, we asked them for a game concept document, and also gave them a really detailed document that I wrote kind of in plain language of all the project terms and expectations. So teams signing onto the project knew exactly what we were trying to do, what we were valuing, and what their responsibilities were. So this included project participation rules, our distribution plan, pretty much everything that we could think of that we needed them to know about the project. So later, this was converted into a legally binding contract that I developed with a lawyer who is familiar, again, with the digital distribution of games and could help us actually move all of that language over. And the way that we formatted that legal document was a work for hire style agreement. So kind of like we were commissioning the games from the contributing teams. And what that means is that my company that is distributing the work owns the final projects. However, we went back and forth and really worked with my lawyer to develop amendments and clauses so that the contributing teams had a lot of rights in terms of reusage of everything that they made, so they could redistribute and sell separately soundtracks or art assets that they made. And they could also continue development of these projects. So we've actually had a few teams that have gone on to receive additional funding or grants and are building their Cartomancy project into larger full-scale games.
So we initially wanted the game to be one single executable, but that did not really seem feasible. Cheska reached out to the lovely haunted PS1 people who talked to us about how they did their demo disc projects. Go check them out, they're really cool. And we ended up having one executable per game that loaded up in the hub space. So the hub acts like a launcher or home base where all the other games would live. Tara created the Hub API. She was our programmer for this project, which handles the transitions between the hub and the games and made it possible for the hub to communicate with those games so you could unlock the deck as you played. Fun fact, we had a Kickstarter stretch goal to do a Switch port, which would have required us to put everything in one single executable. So very glad that didn't work out. Thank you so much for not funding it. As for creative restrictions, we tried to keep creative restrictions pretty open. The only restriction we gave was their card. So we had teams pick their first, second, and third choices, and we tried our best to pair each team with the cards that they found the most compelling. And aside from that and content disclaimers, we left the design and creation of the games totally up to them.
So we're not going to get too much into the specifics of crowdfunding because this isn't a crowdfunding talk, but I did want to mention a few things that were like unique for this project and for this format. So the majority of our traffic came directly from Twitter and other social platforms. This was definitely expected because we had so many people working on the project. We really tried to leverage that natural social outreach of, people's followings online and their networks. So to further support this, we developed a bunch of promo asset kits for contributors to use, to announce that they were a part of the project, and just like different graphics that they could distribute on social media. And I'm also just also laughing forever about the Kickstarter stretch goal. So glad we didn't do that. Another thing that was kind of unique for how we approached crowdfunding is that we really focused on using a strong project visual identity in order to make the Kickstarter something that people were excited about. So generally for crowdfunding, it's significantly easier if you can show your audience the game or most of a game. Kickstarter doesn't guarantee that a project will ship, and backers don't get their money back if the project doesn't launch. So backers are usually very hesitant to fund projects that haven't really proven that they know what they're doing or shown a vertical slice of what that project's going to look like. So we needed to find a way to instill confidence in backers, even though at this point, none of the contributor games were made yet. So what we did instead is we had the organization team really focus on creating some really high polished visual kind of branding for the Cartomancy Hub application. So this is all of the general visual identity for the anthology. And we also created lots of mock-ups, animated mock-ups of what the hub would eventually look like. So this really helped us convince backers that this was a project that they could root for and feel confident about. And I want to give a particular shout out to Amy, who did such a good job with all of this branding and visual identity that really made the Kickstarter possible. We also were really careful about scoping our Kickstarter rewards, again, because we are a fairly small team and we knew that there was so much else that we really had to focus on during this process. So the only physical reward that we did were postcards that had a one card mini reading. These are some photos of Sam and I at a coffee shop filling out these postcards to send out, which was a lot of fun. Also, it was a really great way to feel like we were connecting, with backers and sharing our excitement for the project. The heaviest lift that we did for rewards, but also I think the coolest reward that we did was an art book. So this was a 90-page PDF digital art book that we created, which highlights each project and also showcases a bit of the behind the scenes development process. So screenshots, mock-ups, but also some quotes and reflections from developers as well, which ended up being super cool. So this project was really difficult. It was a huge project, as we mentioned. There were a lot of unknown challenges and firsts that we had to navigate through. So we wanted to talk about some of the biggest things that we learned that we kind of had to overcome through this project. So the first is probably my personal largest mistake was that I went into this project really assuming that because people had joined the project and signed on to contribute, that they trusted me already to make good decisions. The trust had to be established and was something that we had to build over time. But unfortunately, because I think we are very used to, as creators, having our work be taken advantage of, particularly marginalized groups. I think we go into a lot of workplaces or experiences expecting others to really profit off of our hard work. And this was something that I've realized I often expect. And I think it was something that contributors also we had to prove that this was not that type of situation. So in order to facilitate some good rapport and communication and establish that trust, we started scheduling video call check-ins where we had dedicated space where we could talk face-to-face with teams about what they were working on. They could share their excitement for their projects, but also that they could ask us questions. They could express anything that they were finding challenging or difficult, and we could support them through that. Whenever the organization team had to deliver more difficult decisions to the teams as well, I started recording what we called like video letters. So instead of delivering big pieces of information and decisions through text format, because a lot of that, nuance and a lot can get lost through text communication. So we started recording actual videos of me talking through the information and explaining it, which ended up communicating a lot better with our teams. And I think within the organization team as well, I realized that I had not intentionally created structure for discussing negative feelings or challenges of working on the project. I think, again, because we were all coming in with a lot of excitement and like good feelings, when we did hit roadblocks, it became difficult to actually bring those things up in a significant way. We did our best to estimate, right, on time and on budget and on all of our other resources. But as we know, estimates are never correct. You also always need to make adjustments. And this was also technically a side project for, I think, every single person, right, working on it. Everyone had day jobs or other things that they were balancing throughout development. So it made it really difficult to create deadlines that accommodated and adapted to all of these different, unknowns and things that were shifting. I also realized that we were fighting these pre-established assumptions, I think, about how we should be working on something. Working conditions within the games industry really normalize overworking. I think this is something that I carry with me as well, kind of in a day-to-day capacity. And there's really a culture of this self-inflicted suffering as a badge of honor, right? When you kind of people boast about like pulling all-nighters or about crunching. And I think it's really hard to stop doing this to ourselves because we feel like if we love a project, if we're making art, we should want to work on it all the time and then inherently crunch on it. So these are patterns that I think at every project we work on and every team, we really have to actively work to dismantle and create tools and structures to talk about and find alternatives. There were a lot of external pressures that especially the organization team was, internalizing. We really worked so hard because we didn't want to let the contributors down. And I think that added to this need to feel like we needed to overwork and give our best all the time. We also felt the pressure of Kickstarter and the timeline that we had announced. So all of these things made it very, very difficult to even bring this up as a topic of discussion. Mental health of the organization team was quite bad. Sam and I have talked about this a lot, and there were periods that members of our team had to step away from the project and like tap out and take a break. We just really cared so much about doing our best and not letting people down. Even acknowledging that we were overworking felt like a bit of a failure, and it was really hard to talk about. When we were brave and trusting enough to communicate with each other, we were able to move back deadlines very consistently because we do believe that people are always more important than those deadlines. It was just really hard to even bring it up in the first place to figure that out. I also started working with a leadership coach during this project because I realized that I had a lot of personal hangups over power dynamics and bad examples of leadership from my past in the games industry. And I think that really bled into, not being able to make strong decisions or enforce and create structure that would have been really beneficial. And ultimately, I think this made everything a little bit harder on the organization team. So very, very often in the background of this project, it really felt like this, like Sam and I just in the depths of despair, but still really trying to do our best.
Yeah, we realized this project was very big. And the biggest thing we realized is do not do this. Do not do what we did. Don't take all of this on with one small team, a Kickstarter, and a dream, and then release in less than a year after funding. We are very tired. While making these slides, we realized just how much work we did, and it's so much. We have very complicated feelings about this project, and that's okay. We're still ultimately very proud of what we and everyone accomplished. And with that, some takeaways. So there are many things we took away from this project. One is that we wanted everyone to be happy and communicative. Though we still believe that's an ideal for every project, we also know that decisions have to be made. And with 80 plus people involved in this project, we needed to take on stronger roles in making decisions. We had to feel good in what we were doing and the decisions that we were making. Cheska and I, while trying to compromise in 80 plus different directions in various moments, ended in us lacking confidence in our roles. We were nervous like all the time.
All the time.
All the time. Another thing to remember is to expect the unexpected. We had a team drop from the project a week before projects were due. A war began during development that impacted the safety and communication and payment options for some of our teams. Cheska lived in a van for the majority of development. They sent us that picture, by the way, when they found out that we had funded.
Yeah, I was like in the middle of, I think, Colorado, just on the side of a highway.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there was another time that we had contributors that had a lot of questions, and I was like in the woods somewhere. So I was like, I parked on like a hill where I had a little bit of service. Yeah. So it was a wild time. But yeah, I think all of that to say, like, yeah, there was this was so challenging to pull off, but we made it possible for 22 new spectacular games to be made and be shared with the world. I think, like, I went into this so excited about all of the teams, and I had really like high expectations for what they would make, and they completely exceeded expectations. I can like truthfully say every single game in this anthology is like an absolute banger. Like, they're all so good. Yeah, and just like the amount of like kindness and excitement and creativity that every single developer brought into their work was just like very inspiring and really astounding. So I'm really proud of what we created. And also, it really fulfilled that initial goal that we had, right, of reconnecting with other developers and also providing space for people to make some weird, cool stuff that didn't need to focus on being like commercially viable, right? I made a ton of new friends through doing this project. I met a lot of people, not just within, the contributing teams, but also we had a lot of folks, from different organizations reach out to support us or interview or write about the project. And their excitement also just made me feel very, very good and very, very awesome about what we were doing. And lastly, some just like really quick shout outs. I cannot overstate how awesome and incredible the contributing teams are. Please check out their work both in the anthology, but also all of the other awesome games and creative stuff that they're doing. They are truly, truly the best. And I think like exemplify the future of the industry that I want to see. Also, a huge thank you to the organization team who, yeah, as Sam said, we were going through documents to prep this presentation, and we were just like, astounded by how much work went into this and how much care was put into this project. So thank you. There's a lot more ones that are written here, but I also want to give a particular thank you to Sam for being the first person to join the organization team and also like enable me to do this wild project. So thank you so much. I love you. And did you want to call out any shout outs?
Yeah, thank you to my mom.
Thank you,
and
Mom.
a lot of my friends who, as soon as I told them the Kickstarter launched, they were there, they were backing. They were so excited, and honestly, the amazing support system and the amazing like people that just believed in us, like really fueled us through. And also thank you to Cheska for being an amazing leader. And it was really tough, but we did it, and like that's really magical. So
yeah. And our last super, super huge thank you goes to Code Coven, who was our sole sponsor and financial contributor for this project outside of the Kickstarter. So really pushed us over what we needed to give everyone the stipends that they deserved and make sure that we had enough money to finish this project. So thank you so much, Code Coven. And with that, thank you also to you for listening to us talk a little bit about this huge thing that we did. We hope this information was interesting and useful. If there's anything we talked about that you want to hear a little bit more about, please feel super welcome to shoot us an email. We would love to chat.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I already thought that Cartomancy Anthology was a heck of a project before this talk, but now that I have more information, I have an even greater appreciation for the compilation of stories and experiences that this anthology provides. Game dev projects go through all sorts of struggles, and regardless of the struggles that this project went through, I appreciate how many positives Cheska and Samantha were able to find and bring to the stage, as well as some vulnerable lessons learned that I hope will guide all of us to stronger projects in the future. Thanks so much, Cheska and Samantha.